all of those new things.
Do you want me to start sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Probably. Oh, ooh, I think I've come too far into our presentation. Sorry for that. There we go.
Okay, well, hello and welcome to our Tiny Forest with Schools webinar. I'm actually really happy we're doing it again because it's been a while since we've been talking about schools and children and young people's involvement with Tiny Forest. That is not to say that we have not worked with a lot of young people throughout this monitoring season. We certainly have, but it's always nice to meet and to chat about the potential of Tiny Forest and its benefits for young people. So if you go to next slide, Divya, we will just introduce ourselves very briefly. So my name is Hannah and I sit in the Earthwatch education team. So I am involved in the Tiny Forest project, mostly from the educational side. So I work with teachers and our teacher networks, as well as creating resources for Tiny Forest. But we also have plenty of other interesting educational projects happening. I can hopefully tell you a little bit more about. And we've got Admit, and we've got Divya with us today, who's recently gained a new role title. Would you like to introduce yourself, Divya?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Divya. I'm the community engagement manager. So that basically means I work with all our volunteers. So we have close to 700 volunteers right now working across our network of tiny forests. So my job is mostly around empowering them, giving them the tools and trainings that are needed to engage better with their tiny forest, to look after it better. And also kind of do a lot of outreach, so getting people into our tiny forest events, and a lot of bits and bobs around that. And yeah.
And we've also got Lou with us on the call. She's mostly in the background, just listening and spying, but Lou is the senior manager of Tiny Forest. She is the ultimate head. Lou, now that you've heard us, want to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi everybody, lovely to be here.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
look after all of our program delivery of Tiny Forest Project.
Yes, a very busy person indeed. So just a brief introduction to Earthwatch and our education program, for those of you who've not heard of our work. So Earthwatch is an environmental charity, and we are devoted to monitoring and preserving our natural resources. And we do so through connecting people to their natural environment, their local natural environment. I think that's the important bit to say. And we empower them to also get active in our citizen science projects and programs that we have more of than just Tiny Forest. And we highlight the positive impact that we can do. So we focus quite a lot on solutions, and not only the problems, which are, of course, we're not denying. In terms of our educational works, we work together with schools and communities in cities all across the UK. And our work, aside from Tiny Forest, includes projects such as Teach Earth, which is a teacher training program. It is a free program we deliver to trainee teachers and teachers on how to embed environmental and outdoor education into their curriculum-based learning. We also have our brand new Greener School programs, where we bring nature into schools, and we get children and students to design it for themselves. And we are quite devoted to making sure that that young people have access to nature, access to complex nature areas, because there is big inequality in terms of access to nature, and there is a big inequality in the environmental sector. It is the second least diverse sector in the UK after farmers. So we are hoping to change that, and we're hoping to instill it quite early on in people's lives. But we just wanted to check first, and get in touch with you a little bit and ask you how you are doing. First, just simply by asking about your mood based on UK native mammal species that are not necessarily humans. Divya, are you able to share?
Yeah, sorry, just
Let me know
my
if
computer
not.
is freezing. It's just frozen and it's not working. I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay. I can share instead. And then admit a person. Yes, it was very enjoyable to look into all of the mammals living in the UK. So share my screen. Click. Okay. So is everyone able to see my screen right now?
Yes.
And hopefully the description as well. Yeah, so we just wanted to check in to see how everybody's doing, because the autumn-winter season is starting, but it's also a bit of a confusing one, especially in the southeast, especially in London. It is very warm today. I was only wearing t-shirt and shorts, which I can't believe it's almost middle of October. And yeah, so so if you're willing to share, I cannot see the participants right now, so maybe Divya, you can kindly guide me with names, and see whether you're feeling curious about today, like that curious beaver with carrot teeth, very orange.
Yeah.
Yes, so all of them are native UK mammals.
So, do you guys want to just unmute and hop on and pick your animal that
You can start,
or
Divya, as well.
Ooh.
How are you feeling?
Today? I think I think I would probably be a bat. I don't know. I just feel like I'm just fluttering all over the place today. Just, having an overview of everything, but then yeah, just really active, and yeah, I think a bat. It also goes with the whole Halloween theme, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, October is quite spooky.
Oh, would you guys want to go on your own, or?
Sorry, hi, I'm Vanya. I was a bit late. I only joined in now. Sorry, I was rushing back from work to access this webinar from home. So what I was supposed to do, to pick an animal?
Yes, please.
Yes.
What do you
Yes,
feel
that
like
is
today?
showing your mood today.
I had to show my mood today. Okay,
Yes.
well, I would go for cozy like a hedgehog.
Yay.
Oh,
Okay, that was my
nice.
favorite one. Definitely, with a cup of tea.
Who would want to go next? We have Michelle or Gillian, Fiona. Please feel free to unmute yourself and hop on.
In all honesty,
I feel like Gillian here. I feel like a beaver. I'm really curious as to how we get schools involved in a tiny forest.
Nice.
Perfect.
And
Thank
I think
you.
Fiona was ready to go
yeah,
with.
I was going to say curious like a beaver as well, because I want to find out more about the tiny forests.
Fantastic.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
And
Michelle, you got hyena on your t-shirt, so
Yes.
I am a bit scared of your answer, I have to say.
Yes, well, if I could say I'm like a hyena, I'm very adaptive, like a hyena. So adaptive to different situations. I've just come from a community event, talking to lots of people, coming here. So yes, just feeling ready to fit in with whatever's going on and learn from different things.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm not sure. I think earlier today I was a little bit withdrawn as well, but starting to feel quite cozy. Divya and I decided to do a little bit more of a cozy vibe webinar as well, to also show the potential of Tiny Forest as a beautiful community building project. So we do really appreciate your sharing, even if you might be tired after work, but we hope that it will work for you. So now that I've got you, Michelle, still on my screen, and Divya, you can stop sharing. Would you mind also telling us where you're coming from, what your local forest is, and if you are a teacher, and if you aren't, what is your involvement with schools, with young people, and or children? Young people are also children. That's me sharing, isn't it?
Yes, just about
realized.
Yeah, my computer is still very wonky, so I think you might have to take control of this. Sorry, Anna.
Gotcha. No worries.
Yes, who would like to go next?
I'm happy to go. I'm the Pox and Green Space Volunteering Officer in Haringey Council, and so I was part of the event when we planted it, and I've been kind of just promoting the forest to residents in general. We've got it as a volunteer opportunity on our Haringey Council Parks volunteering page, and I've been liaising with the current tree keepers that are well, one of them is active, but just trying to encourage a little bit of activity at the space, and recently had a good gym session with members of the community coming along and helping with a weeding session in the dark, which was very interesting, and obviously with lights, but yeah, it was
that's
great.
Amazing. Haringey is my local tiny forest, so
Oh,
I'm
really?
not too far. Yes, I'm there very
Great.
often. I'm just half an hour on the bike, so yeah,
Nice.
maybe I'll see you there one day.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay, Gillian, Fiona, or is it Vanya?
So you're on mute, Vanya.
This is Gillian.
This is Gillian.
Hiya. Yeah. I'm a retired head teacher from a school in Birmingham, and I came across the tiny forest in the Pericommon Meadows. So I've joined them to try and see how we can, use the tiny forest with schools. So I'm just sort of filling my retirement up with working with them. But I've only just joined. I've only been there a few months, so it's all new.
Amazing. Thank you. Super. Welcome. Okay, Vanya and Fiona, I'll just take 2 of our answers before we move on.
Okay, so I'm a teacher at Scraptoft Valley Primary School. I'm the eco lead there as well, and gardening club leader. We had our tiny forest planted, I believe, 2.5 years ago.
Oh,
like that. So it's quite new and tiny still. So yes, I've joined to be and applied to be the tree keeper in my school in order to create more opportunities for outdoor learning for children, and to create opportunities for them to follow up on the whole project, to see it, how it grows, and different habitats that it creates for animals, and all the benefits really that a forest provides for flora and fauna. So yeah.
great. Super. Okay, thank you. Fiona, would you like to tell us who you are, where you're calling from?
Hi, I'm in Bristol. I'm sort of in between jobs at the moment. I'm doing a bit of supply work and doing sort of learning support roles and some tutoring roles. But I'm very passionate about environmental education and would like to do more, really.
Great, that's fantastic. Wow, yeah, so we really are coming from all around the UK, which is, well, all around England, I should say, probably, in all fairness. But it is something that gives me quite a lot of joy as well to hear how everyone is connected through this tiny but a powerful project. So what you all mentioned today as well is what we going to do. So we will have an overview of Tiny Forest. we decided to try to give a chance for you to reflect a little bit upon what tiny forest means to you, to the environment, to young people, and then we'll be, of course, adding and asking some and answering any questions that you might have. We do believe that this kind of more interactive learning is quite beneficial to a lot of people, because we can go out there and we can tell teachers and educators and parents of why it's so important, but it is truly the teachers, it is truly the people who are local to the tiny forest that know the reality of their tiny forest the best. So being able for others to hear from those experiences is extremely beneficial. But I will hand it over to Divya to tell us a little bit about Tiny Forest for those of us who are new to them. So off you go, Divya.
Lovely. So I think Vanya and Michelle are the ones who have visited the Tiny Forest. What about you, Fiona? Have you seen the Tiny Forest in Bristol, or have you come across it?
I haven't, no. I know there are some, but I haven't yet, no.
Okay. So yeah, just to give a bit of an overview. So for the ones who are already associated with the tiny forest or has seen one, so I think you might be familiar with it. So yeah, tiny forest, as the name suggests, is tiny. So it is basically a tiny but dense miniature native woodland. So we are trying to create or have the benefits of a woodland in a very small space. So they're usually the size of a tennis court. That's like roughly 200 square meters, but then they come in like various different shapes, sizes that kind of fit into these little, small spaces that you have in the urban setting. So our tiny forests are mostly planted in urban spaces, and majority of them in areas that do not have any good quality green or blue spaces, just to make sure that we are bringing nature to people's doorstep. And yeah, it's basically planted based on a methodology developed by a Japanese botanist called Dr. Akira Miyawaki. So there are like different forest layers. So you have the canopy, subcanopy, understory, and shrub. So it makes like a really good habitat. So they're all native species. So if you go to your local forest, you might be able to recognize, a lot of different, the trees that grow very slowly, like the oaks, but then you have the fast growing ones like cherry, and then you have shrubs like holly. So a lot of different species that you kind of might come across, when you go to your local woodland. So we got a good mix going, and the part of the tiny forest project is also community engagement. So we try to, it's not that's what sets it apart from your other tree planting programs, where we're trying to get the community to use and own the tiny forest that is local to them. So we're trying to develop this nature stewardship where people make it their own space. And we've seen that happening in very many ways in our tiny forests. So we have planted over 208 tiny forests so far. And
yes. I'm sharing the map.
Oh, yeah. So it does say 215 because it includes the tiny forests that are outside the UK as well. So we have, as you can see, there are a few in Netherlands and all the way to Germany. And I think if you zoom out further, you kind of can see some in Australia as well. So, but in the UK, we have 208 tiny forests, and we have close to, I think I would say 50 more tiny forests coming up this season. So yeah, just keep an eye out on our Eventbrite page, because we'll be posting all our new tiny forest plantings that are coming up. So yeah, I mean, just talking about this, like, what do you, we, as Hannah mentioned, we did want to keep this a little interactive as well, so giving you an opportunity to reflect. So before we go further, I just wanted to check, what do you guys think from this overview of the tiny forest, or having visited and nurtured one of your own? What might be the environmental benefits that come with a tiny forest? You can kind of unmute and give a shout, and then we can kind of move further from there. So what do you think, what tiny forest means to the environment, to the local wildlife? How do you think that could be beneficial?
storing carbon.
Absolutely, perfect. So that's one of them. What else?
Flood control.
Brilliant. I think you're taking away words from my notes, but yeah, let's go. Let's go with more. What do you guys think? What else?
Well, it helps restore the insects and the biodiversity back again, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Certainly for the children to study.
Bang on, bang on. So yeah, tiny forests are actually they have a lot of benefits that come with it. So they're what we call the urban nature-based solution. So basically, these are interventions that are inspired by and involve nature, and we try to use that to mitigate some of the effects of that we are facing. So mainly the climate crisis that we are having. So you can kind of look out and see how weirdly warm this autumn is, and that is, one of the many effects that climate change has had on our local environment and the weather patterns. And these definitely disproportionately affect different people differently. But then tiny forest acts as, one of the many ways of trying to mitigate some of these effects of climate change. And as you guys mentioned, yes, carbon storage is one of them. So the 600 trees in the tiny forest basically store carbon in their leaves and stems and roots. So they're really good at capturing carbon. Yes, flood is another important one, especially, with rapid urbanization, where, we are covering the space with gray infrastructure. There are not enough land to kind of soak up all this water. And with the very erroneous climatic condition, there are like short bursts of heavy rain, so there's no place for the water to get absorbed, and then there's flooding in the urban spaces. So tiny forests, especially the trees, are proven to have very good effect in kind of absorbing all this water. So they can help in flood management. And then another thing that you might have heard about is the urban green island effect. So again, because of the gray infrastructure, there is a lot of heat buildup in these cities, and tiny forests are known to have a cooling effect. So you might experience that when you stand behind, under the shade of a tree, you kind of feel cooler. So again, a lot of that effect is kind of felt in the tiny forest as well. So, and then yes, biodiversity crisis. So tiny forests are known to attract over 500 different species of plants and animals in the first 3 years of its development. So they form really complex habitats that are really important for our urban wildlife. So yeah, absolutely, they're really good for, as a nature-based solution. And the other thing we wanted to talk about was, do you want to maybe talk about what you think or why you think tiny forests are important for children and young people? So we spoke about why it's important for the environment. So maybe next part we could talk about why it could be important for children and young people. So please feel free to unmute and reflect on.
Well, it's obviously going to be good for their mental health, hasn't it, following COVID lockdown in schools?
Absolutely, that's a very good point.
And I think it's really good that they're in urban areas as well, where a lot of children don't have access to nature or natural spaces.
Very true. Absolutely. So I think you guys hit one of the main things that we were talking about. So yeah, disconnect from nature and anxiety were some of the things that we wanted to cover as well. So these are some of the reasons why we actually got into the Tiny Forest program. So it's not just the environmental and benefits, but also the social benefits of having these really good quality natural spaces. So there is this, the disconnect from nature is actually quite real. So much so that, it's actually diagnosed as a disorder. So I think it's called, Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, the nature deficit disorder.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So So with children spending less and less time in good quality green spaces and more time on screens, it's becoming a very big problem. And that is shown to have an effect on their mental health, as you guys mentioned. So, having these spaces at people's doorstep becomes a lot more important. And also a lot of our tiny forests are in schools, so a lot of children can actually access them for longer, and using these spaces as more than just, in more ways that we would be talking about in a bit. Hannah, do you want to mention about the Lego study that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've, I don't know if any of you mentioned eco-anxiety, but this is something that is shockingly affecting more and more people. So in this study that was led by University of Bath, they found that about 10,000 people in 10 countries all around the world, so including Western countries, but also countries that are more affected by climate change, that the majority, 2/3 of young people between the age of 16 and 25 reported feeling very or extremely worried about climate change. A lot of them said that it negatively affects their daily functioning. And there are also other, it's not only anxiety that young people feel, there are also other things such as solastalgia, which is defined as kind of ecological grief that we feel towards losing our home, our natural environment. And I think a very important part of that is that children really don't feel like they have any agency to act. Like, their emotions are strong, and even though it is okay to have those emotions, we as adults, as teachers, and as educators have this responsibility to be able to channel their emotions towards a more positive action. And so Lego did a study. Again, they studied people between the age of 8 and 18, and found that children have a lowering feeling of political agency. They feeling that they're missing positive role models, and as they're getting older, they're getting increasingly frustrated as they see the governmental and societal inaction and poor example setting. So for us, what we're doing with those tiny forests is we are creating an opportunity to kind of break this cycle. So even though the tiny forests are small, they're a very, very strong example of how we can break this this belief. And the research, and as we will go further into seeing how we can use tiny forests, research really shows that through the time in nature, through the time in a more complex natural environment, children gain a lot of benefits. So not only benefits for their mental health, but there are studies that show that it boosts their educational attainment, development of their people skills, attitudes towards nature. There is studies as well. There's a study by University of Derby showing that it encourages positive behavior towards the environment. So we do believe that there is quite an incredible potential. So I will move on into how the tiny forest fits into the UK education system, but just wanted to ask if you have any questions so far, especially when it comes to understanding what Tiny Forest as a project is, before we move into how to use it and how to encourage teachers and educators and young people to get more involved in it. Any questions? No? Okay, super. So Has any of you heard of the sustainability and climate change strategy? You can just send me a reaction emoji if you have. Otherwise, I won't be able to see as I'm screen sharing. If not, that is completely okay. So this is something new that has come up after COP26, which was hosted in Glasgow. As the government adopted the 25-year environmental plan and net zero strategy that hopefully will not be compromised by the current government, the Department of Education decided that it is crucial that schools and young people get involved in it as well. So for us, this is really important because this is given a very strong incentive for schools, for young people to get involved in environmental education. So climate change and sustainability strategy was launched in April 22nd, as I said, in response to the COP in Glasgow. And to help to deliver the vision of the UK government and to become a world-leading education sector in sustainability and climate change by 2030. It is a very big promise, and we are still trying to figure out how the governments are doing. But Divya, if you could share the link to the strategy and the link to the Snapchat, that I do encourage you to have at least a skim through the strategy and see what it says, and then sign up for the newsletter for the latest updates, as there are quite a lot since its adoption. So what the strategy includes, some of the things it includes is education nature parks, which is also there's quite a big funding for it. So a lot of schools will be already involved and will be having their school grounds transformed into ones that are a bit more inviting towards biodiversity. We will have climate leaders awards. There's going to be climate literacy survey, and a big part of that is also climate change personal development for teachers. So it's a teacher training as well. There are going to be coming sustainability lead roles into every schools, and their role would be to lead on the climate action plan that every school is required to have by 2025. So there are quite a lot of changes coming. We still don't quite know how the implementation will look like, but what we try to do at Airforge Education is to prepare teachers and prepare those working with schools and make sure that they are aware, because a lot of things will be changing in the sector. So I do highly encourage you to read that strategy as well. I put another recent interesting piece of news that kind of responded to the fact that young people feel like they don't have that political agency, was the fact that a youth-led, mostly secondary students, led organizations called Teach the Future. A couple of years ago, they proposed a climate education bill that encourages more cross-curricular approaches to environmental learning and embedding more of climate change and environmental topic into learning at schools. And it's been adopted by the Labour Party in their draft policy program of the next election. So I thought it was interesting because it's another example alongside of Tiny Forest that can give people that agency. But even further into the tiny forest and further into that agency, this empowerment, sharing for young people, is the fact that the Department of Education, as well as the UK government, is pushing quite strongly for the development of green skills and green careers. Has any of you heard of the term at all, or been involved with it in any ways? No? Okay, so very briefly, green skills are about to ensuring that we are preparing young people for a future that is changing quite a lot. It's not only going to be changing in traditionally environmental sectors, such as renewable energy sector, but in fact, all the sectors will be required to change and to adapt. If we look at the green skills, we are dividing them into STEM skills. So these are the science, technology, engineering, and math skills. So these are the skills that are a little bit more specific, that are more scientific, if you will, as well. But there are also other skills that are essential, such as people skills, because science communication, environmental communication is a huge part of environmental education, and it is going to be needed. But there's also there is a need for systemic change skills, because the current system that is in place, the current institutions, the current economy models, they, as we found, don't well, not only don't benefit, but also can have a negative impact on our environment and well-being. So this is where teachers will need to be stimulating, teachers and educators and parents will need to be stimulating that creative thinking, this outside of the box thinking, and all of it is part of green skills. So we do have a video that we did to show the variety of green skills that there are based on our own Tiny Forest team, because we, of course, not only have scientists working in the Tiny Forest team, but we have people like myself or Divya that are doing a lot of communications and are doing a lot of research and design, a lot of creative work. And so this is something that is needed. We also recently launched our green skills resources. They're for students who are a little bit older, but I think they provide quite essential information and ways to learn a little bit more about the green skills. Okay, so what can we do in the Tiny Forest now that we know about all of the changes that are coming from the Department of Education, and now that we are aware of all of the issues that we need to be addressing. So as most of you might already know, our Tiny Forest team can't unfortunately go to all of the 200 plus forest to collect the necessary data. So this is where citizens, where local residents, where school children come to help us. They contribute to our work with their skills, with their expertise, but also even with their eagerness. It really does not matter what kind of skills people have to start with, whether they've heard of the project, whether they have been involved in environmental work before. This is a space that is inviting to all. So and this data is very crucial to us because it helps us determine the potential of Tiny Forest as a sustainable nature-based solution that improves the local urban climate resilience and biodiversity, so addresses those issues that Divya mentioned earlier, as well as addresses issues of deficit of nature connection, and as well as that as I've been mentioning, that feeling, that lack of political agencies. So through the Tiny Forest project, so the key themes that we monitor, that some of us mentioned, because they're both themes that we monitor, but also benefits that tiny forests provide. So there are carbon capture, flood management, thermal comfort, and biodiversity. We now also measure social impact of the tiny forest, which is, I have to say, my favorite piece of data. It's one that is the most difficult to gather, but it's definitely a crucial one. So through engaging with those monitoring activities, we really are building that climate literacy. We're building the understanding of the Earth systems, how they dependent on one another, and how they impact life, our life, and life on Earth in general. It answers a lot of questions of why climate change happens why is it so strongly felt in urban spaces, and how it is connected to other environmental issues. And it provides that crucial building blocks for feeling empowered and to ask important questions and to take actions, while, of course, addressing addressing eco-anxiety and this lack of connection to nature we discussed earlier. Any questions so far? I keep asking as I'm powering through the slides. So if you have any questions, just feel free to pop them in the chat as well. So tiny forests are, I want to say, are especially beneficial for science teachers, but I do not want to say that, and I will tell you more about it in the next slide. But STEM in the Tiny Forest team is quite an exciting thing, because what Tiny Forests are a living science lab. So this is a way where we get to merge all of those scientific skills. So for those of you that are familiar with the national curricula, we know that working scientifically is a big skill that is required for students all across the years and the key stages. But what STEM is also highlighting is the fact of how science and other disciplines, how interdisciplinary they are. So again, similar to green skills, we're not only talking about scientific skills, we are really talking about this intersectionality, interdisciplinarity between the different elements of nature learning. So this is also real life science. We're talking about real life situation. We are talking about something that we experience every single day and we are dependent on every single day. So given people that opportunity to engage with this real life science, with their real life situations, it's really empowering. Because as they go about their days, as they take their walks, as they stand next to the small tree on their school grounds, they'll be able to be linking all of those things instead of just learning them from a textbook. This is also there's focus on the solution-based thinking. So here we have an example of a nature-based solution, and here we are showing how different issues, both societal and environmental issues, can be addressed through a project such as Tiny Forest. And of course, there is science communication, because we are talking about the data and we are talking about the impact that Tiny Forests are providing. And yes, because I didn't want to say tiny forests are only good for science teachers, this is something that came from our workshop that we delivered to secondary school teachers yesterday. It wasn't on tiny forests specifically, but we did use the soil testing, the very same method that we use for tiny forest, to see if we can talk about soil in other subjects. And I did quite a big dig into the curriculum, and I found some interesting things. So this is all from the secondary curricula. So for those of you working with primary schools, I don't think you have to be concerned and something that doesn't apply to you. It very much does apply to you, because all the work you're doing in primary school is also preparing students for their secondary life school. So in geography, we talk a lot about settlements as well, different places where people settle, why they settle there. This is something that will be coming up. We can talk about flooding. We can talk about why people have chosen certain areas. How is that changing because of climate change? We can talk about climate refugees there. In biology, we can, of course, talk about plant nutrients, how they're absorbing those nutrients from the soil. Then what is the composition of the soil that we can look and we can test in chemistry classes? We can further look into the pH of the soil. Then the requirement of the design and technology curriculum is to look at the impact of industries. So why is soil important, and why that negative impact that the industry has is affecting the soil, and what it is doing, and how tiny forests help to solve it, help to address it, and help us to discuss. We can look at maths in so many ways, not only measuring the trees, but also looking at the ratio of toxins in the soil. There is history and archaeology, and I was very entertained looking into English and Shakespeare and discovering how much. I don't remember the direct quote now from Hamlet, but there was something from the burial of Ophelia and how violets grow from her deceased body. And it is a little bit funny, but at the same time, can we talk about how come violets grow from a dead body? What happens there, and what should happen there naturally that those violets grow? And also because a lot of soil that we use, a lot of soil in the UK and in urban places is quite strongly clay-based. Can we, in art classes, look at different materials? What can we do? Can we save some soils? Can we create something with our students? So it didn't take as much time for me to be able to show that that tiny forest can also be extremely beneficial cross-curricularly. We do know that teachers, especially secondary school teachers, are swamped with different requirements that they have to adhere to, with exam preparation, with GCSE. So we know that any extra activities that don't quite fit into the curricula, that don't quite fit into exam requirements, are going to be difficult for teachers to be willing to engage with. But we can show that tiny forest can give curriculum-based activities. And as we noticed, as one of the teachers, I think I like that example quite a lot. One of the teachers we met through the Tiny Forest, one of our Tiny Forest live teacher training, said how he could do 20 minutes of learning maths inside the classroom, where all of his students are just almost falling asleep in that very stuffy, very crowded old classroom, and how they will not very likely remember very much from it, and how they can go outside where they have the space, when they have the real life connection, where they have the ability to breathe fresh-ish air, and how that 5 minutes of being outdoor is so much more beneficial than the indoor learning. And the final one, which a lot of you did mention when we started that conversation, is the benefit of the tiny forest to build that connection to nature that's been missing and it's been increasingly missing for young people. the way we build that connection to nature is through 5 different ways. So it's through contact, beauty, meaning, emotion, and compassion. So based on the tiny forest, contact is there. Through even engaging in activities such as measuring the soil, we get the contact with actual soil. We get to appreciate the beauty of the tiny forest as it grows, as it blossoms in winter. I think my favorite tree to bloom is the broom, because it is so pretty and yellow, but there are so many other. There is the meaning. What does it mean to have that space in our area? What does it make us feel in emotion and compassion? What can we do to engage with it, to help it? So yeah, that was a quite quick overview of the tiny forest. There are, of course, a lot of challenges that come with engagement in the tiny forest, such as behavior management. But as we now have worked with schools and with young people all across the UK, we can really say that the overarching experience and the overarching ability of the tiny forest is actually quite incredible on behavior management, on the learning aspects, on the social skill building. So that, I think, is a very quick overview of the tiny forest. And I wonder if you have any questions when it comes to education in the tiny forest specifically, before I let Divya wrap up the session and tell you a little bit more about how to become a bit more engaged. Questions?
No.
That's all right. Okay.
Lovely.
You go.
Yay. So yeah, we have got a lot of potential. Like we can do a lot of activities all through the year in the tiny forest. So we created this calendar to give you an overview of, what are the different activities you could be doing. We've also listed like the national and international days that you could celebrate in your tiny forest, how you could kind of link them up. We also have the different days, weeks, such as the Biodiversity Week in May, the Carbon Storage Week in September that we recently celebrated. So there are a lot of opportunities that you can kind of use the tiny forest. And right now, we're also working on another resource that we're planning to create. So Hannah is working on that. So having like a monthly guide to see, what would be happening in your forest every month, what tree is going into a bubble burst, and, how you could kind of take the kids in there and talk about all these different interactions between pollinators and flowers. And, there's so many things that you could be doing. And we are trying to kind of capture these ideas in these guides. So that is one of the things. And also to be looking forward to, all these will be put up in our website soon. So Hannah, do you want to maybe share the website and we can kind of go through the resources that are there?
Absolutely. Yes, so I will have to. I'll just put the links to the website, I think, now that I'm sharing. So you can access all of the resources for the Tiny Forest website, as well as through our education platform. So we've kind of doubled our website, because so our educational platform will have additional resources that are not necessarily linked to the Tiny Forest, but are extremely beneficial to engaging with tiny forests, such as outdoor management, outdoor behavior management, such as also all other activities that are not necessarily linked to monitoring of the tiny forest. Did you manage to share, Divya, or do you still want me to?
Yeah, I have shared the education resource. Perfect. And I'm also sharing the Tiny Forest website. So again, there's a separate section called resources, where you can access all the survey guides, so all the fun surveys that Hannah was talking about. They're extremely accessible. Most of them don't need any equipment. Like biodiversity survey, you can just take the children into the forest and maybe just, lift up a tile to see all the creepy crawlies, or, you can just have a little mindful moment with, the biodiversity like pollinator survey or a butterfly count. So there are different ways of, using these surveys as a tool to kind of connect with nature. So even though, yes, they are generating very important data, but they are really good with, connecting children and young people to nature. So we have got a lot of resources there, so you can access all the survey guides. And there are also a lot of, our YouTube channel where we share all the training videos are all found there. And also I would definitely suggest, I think most of you are already signed up as tree keepers. So if not, you can reach out to us on the email that Louise has posted. So you can kind of reach out to us, sign up as a tree keeper, so you kind of get updates about what can be done in the tiny forest, and get updates about any events that are coming up. And yes, as Lou mentioned, we have monitoring kits. So yes, some of them can be done without any equipment, but for surveys like the soil surveys and thermal comfort, you do need quite a bit of equipment. So, and we have monitoring kits that are assigned for each tiny forest. So you can write to us and let us know, and we can send a kit out so you can keep using that to keep monitoring your forest. You can use these as opportunities to kind of engage the wider community as well. So it's always fun to kind of get more people involved and do it together in a collective way. And I've also posted the YouTube channel, so we have all the resources recorded there. So even this particular webinar, we'll also be uploading it onto the playlist shortly. So you have all those amazing resources that you can access whenever you want. And I think
yeah, and a big request as well for you to share your stories, to share your ideas, because as we've tried to highlight throughout this session, it is the program, the project is so much stronger when it is the communities sharing the work that they're doing. And there's some amazing ideas, and we could have just another whole webinar just devoted to all of the incredible ideas that people, including schools and including teachers and educators, have come up with since we started the project. So we do highly encourage you to do that. We are considering adding a little bit of that into maybe a highlight from each tiny forest every now and again into our calendar, because it's nice to see that people like ourselves, people in our local communities are doing something, and that it really is possible to create that beautiful engagement. Yeah, but that's 5 o'clock, so we're right on time. And yeah, we'd like to thank you in all of the languages that we have in our education team, which are quite a few. I will stop sharing the screen, and for those of you who would like to just stay and ask any questions, feel free, and we're still for 5 extra minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, I am wishing you a fabulous, weirdly warm day, as I'm still looking outside of a window and pondering how it is that it's still so warm. So thank you so much for attending, and thank you for sharing your views, your ideas, and your involvement in Tiny Forest.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to stay just for a couple of minutes just to ask about, if I can, when everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
Please.
So as a tree keeper, I told you earlier that I applied as a tree keeper, and now Divya, I believe you sent me the details. Now I managed to log on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm expecting now the equipment to be sent to our school. By the way, I'm in Leicester. I said Scrapton Valley Primary School as if that, you know, centre of the world. So you knew where it's in Leicester.
Perfect.
So I was just wondering, will there be a training opportunity as to how to use the equipment and how to, you know, how to do the survey, how to upload and the data and all that?
Yes, so the thing, so if you look at the YouTube playlist, there are already some specific trainings like the biodiversity one and the carbon capture, but also I think there is Laura from the Leicester Council, so I can connect you with Laura because she and her team are actually having in-person training sessions all through the in different schools in Leicester because we have close to a dozen Tiny Forest in schools in Leicester. So Laura and her team are they're part of the council's sustainable schools program.
Yeah,
so they're
I'm in contact with her. Yeah.
Perfect. So I can also give a little call out. So next time she's having one of these in-person trainings, she can probably loop you and your colleagues in, so you can kind of get those. But also the trainings, the surveys are actually very simple, so you can still have a read through the protocol, and if you have questions, you can always come back to us. And you know, just try it out, and then in the meantime, I'll try to get some.
That comes with the equipment, sort of manual thing, is it? Is it like a little booklet? So yeah. Well, yeah.
Sorry, Vanya, did you say you're in Leicester?
Yes.
Yes. We have recently actually